The sound of rain drowned the city that evening, cold, persistent, and cruel. Lara Evans ran without knowing where she was going. The bus had left minutes ago, her shoes were soaked, and her phone had died. Everything in her life felt like this storm. Unforgiving. She stopped at a park bench, chest tight, eyes stinging. Her jacket clung to her like a second skin. She sat, shaking, staring at the blurred glow of streetlights through tears. Somewhere between exhaustion and despair, she whispered to no one, "I can't do this anymore." Hello family, welcome to Diary of a Storyteller. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful, emotional, and heartwarming stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into this story. A man walked by, holding an umbrella. He slowed when he saw her, hesitant. Lara didn't look up. She didn't care who he was or what he thought. "Are you all right?" His voice came, deep but careful. She didn't answer, just shook her head. Her lips trembled before the words escaped, soft, broken, and unexpected even to her. Please, just pretend to hug me." The man froze.
Please.
For a moment, the rain seemed to stop. He looked at her, unsure if he'd heard right, but there was something in her voice, an ache that demanded no explanation. He hesitated, then knelt slightly and wrapped his arms around her. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't gentle either. It was desperate, human. She let out a quiet sob, the kind that's been trapped for too long. The man said nothing. He just held her as the rain continued to fall, their breaths visible in the cold air. After a minute, Lara pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That was weird." He shook his head. "No, it wasn't." She forced a faint laugh, half apology, half relief. "Thanks, whoever you are." He smiled slightly. "Ethan." "Lara," she replied, rubbing her arms. "Well, Ethan, thanks for the pretend hug." He offered his umbrella, but she refused. "You'll catch a cold," he said. "I already did," she murmured, turning away. He watched her walk down the street, small against the pouring rain, and something about that moment refused to leave him. When he finally got into his car, his driver asked, "Sir, everything all right?" Ethan only nodded, staring out the window. For the rest of the night, Lara couldn't stop thinking about the stranger who didn't flinch when she broke down. She didn't know why it mattered. Maybe because it was the first time in months someone had seen her without trying to fix her. The next morning, she dragged herself to work at a small cafe downtown. The manager had already threatened to replace her for being late too often. Her life had become a loop: work, hospital visits for her mother, and endless bills. No joy, no break. Just survival. The door chimed. She looked up and froze. Ethan stood at the counter, casual, calm, holding his phone. Their eyes met. A flicker of recognition, then awkward smiles. "Small world," he said softly. She tried to laugh. "I swear I'm not following you." I was about to say the same. He ordered black coffee. She handed it to him, fingers brushing briefly. The warmth of the cup against her skin made her heart skip. He paid and left a tip that was far too generous. She frowned. "Hey, this is too much. Consider it a thank you for the umbrella I never gave you." For a second, she wanted to ask why he was being kind, but her pride kept her quiet. That evening, after her shift, she saw him again, sitting outside the cafe, reading. He looked like someone who belonged somewhere else, not in her quiet corner of the city. But he wasn't pretentious. He smiled when she passed, and somehow she found herself sitting beside him. "Rough day?" he asked. "Every day's rough," she said. He nodded. "You said your name's Lara?" "Yeah." "Nice name. You looked like you needed a hug yesterday." She smirked. "And today I look better?" "A little," he said. "Still tired." She laughed softly. "Guess you're observant." "I just notice people who pretend they're fine." Something about his tone, gentle, knowing, made her chest tighten. She hadn't realized how transparent her pain was. They talked for nearly an hour, about coffee, music, bad jobs, and how some nights felt too long. Nothing deep, but it was easy. Too easy. When she got up to leave, he said, "Maybe I'll see you again." "Maybe," she replied, walking away. But in her heart, she hoped she would. Over the next few days, he returned, always around the same hour, always sitting by the window. They didn't exchange numbers. It was unspoken. Whatever this was, it didn't need to be rushed. One afternoon, as she served his coffee, she said, "You never tell me what you do." He smiled. "You never ask." "Well, I'm asking now." "I work with people," he said vaguely. "Sounds suspiciously vague." He chuckled. "It's just boring office stuff." "Then I'm sorry for your loss," she teased. They both laughed, and for the first time in months, Lara felt light. That night, as she locked up the cafe, her phone buzzed. The hospital. Her mother's condition had worsened. Panic set in. She ran through the streets again, memories of that night flashing back. The rain, the hug, the stranger who made her feel seen. At the hospital, she sat by her mother's bed, exhausted. The nurse told her they couldn't continue treatment until payments were made. She stared at the bill in disbelief. It was more than she earned in months. The next morning, she was quiet at work. Ethan noticed the change instantly. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," she lied. He didn't push, but when she served his coffee, her hands trembled slightly. He saw the hospital band still on her wrist. After he left, Lara found an envelope tucked beneath the napkin on the table. Inside was a note. "For whatever you need most, no strings attached, and cash, enough to cover a week of hospital care." Her heart pounded. She wanted to be angry, but mostly she was afraid. How did he know? Why would he help? She ran outside to find him, but he was gone. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every part of her wanted to believe he meant well. Another part whispered that kindness like his always came with a price. When dawn came, she decided to confront him. Lara found him the next morning at his usual table, reading like nothing had happened. Her steps were quick, heartbeat louder than the coffee grinder behind her. She set the cup down harder than she meant to, spilling a few drops. "You left this yesterday," she said, holding up the envelope. Ethan looked up, calm. "You found it. You think I just take money from a stranger?" "It wasn't charity," he said quietly. "It was help." "There's no difference," she snapped. "You don't even know me." He studied her face, saw the dark circles, the exhaustion that no amount of pride could hide. "You look like someone who needed a break." Her throat tightened. "Don't do that. Don't look at me like you know what I need." He sighed, leaning back. "You're right, I don't. But I know what it's like to feel cornered." For a moment, she wanted to throw the envelope at him. Instead, she placed it on the table and whispered, "Keep your money, Ethan. I'm not your good deed of the week." She turned and walked away before her voice could break. For the next few days, he stopped coming. The cafe felt quieter, emptier. Lara tried to convince herself that's what she wanted, but every time the door chimed, she looked up, hoping it was him. 3 nights later, while heading home, she saw him standing outside the hospital gates. The rain had returned, lighter this time. He was holding a paper bag. She hesitated, then approached. "You stalking me now?" He smiled faintly. "Your friend at the cafe told me your shift ended early. I guessed you'd be here. What's in the bag?" "Soup. My mom used to make it when she was sick. Thought maybe your mom would like it." Lara's anger softened a little. She took the bag carefully. "You really don't give up, do you?" "Not when I mean something," he said. Inside, her mother slept. Lara tasted the soup. It was good, warm in a way she hadn't felt in weeks. When she came out again, Ethan was still waiting. "You didn't have to stay." He shrugged. "Maybe I needed the air." They walked side by side without speaking. When they reached the corner, she stopped. "You said you know what it's like to feel cornered. What did you mean?" He hesitated, eyes fixed on the wet pavement. "I used to work with people who had nothing but money. They taught me that wealth solves problems but kills peace. I left that world a few months ago." "So you're running from something?" "Maybe," he admitted. "A life that looked perfect but wasn't." She watched him for a long time. There was no arrogance, no performance, just quiet sadness. Then, "Maybe we're both running," she said. They met more often after that. Some nights outside the hospital, some mornings before her shift. They talked about everything that didn't hurt too much to say. Childhood memories, favorite songs, the kind of silence that feels safe. One evening she told him, "When I asked you to hug me that night, I wasn't thinking. I just felt empty. Like if no one touched me, I'd disappear." He nodded. "I didn't think either. I just knew what that emptiness feels like." Their friendship grew slowly, fragile but real. She began to laugh again, sometimes forgetting the weight she carried. Her coworkers noticed. "You're glowing," one teased. "Must be the coffee fumes," Lara joked, but her heart warmed at the thought of Ethan. Weeks passed, her mother's health stabilized a little, and for once, life seemed possible again. She started sketching on napkins during breaks, something she hadn't done since college. When Ethan saw them, he said, "You should sell these." She laughed. "Who'd buy doodles? People who see what I see." He took one of her sketches, a streetlight under rain, and kept it. "I'll frame it," he promised. One Friday, as they walked by the river, he said, "You ever think about leaving this city?" "Every day," she replied, "but I can't. My mom needs me." He nodded. "What if someone helped, not with money, with possibilities?" She frowned. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Trying to fix things that aren't yours to fix." He smiled softly. "Maybe I just don't want you to stop dreaming." That night, she sat by her mother's bed and told her about Ethan, the stranger who wasn't really a stranger anymore. Her mother listened quietly, smiling faintly. "He sounds kind." "He is," Lara said. "Too kind sometimes." "Maybe that's what you need." But Lara wasn't sure. Kindness had always come with expectations. The next week she arrived at work to find the cafe unusually busy. Her manager grinned. "Some local company posted about us online. Said we make the best coffee in town. We've had orders nonstop." She scrolled through her phone. There it was, a post from a verified account, praising her latte art, tagging the shop. The username, E. Cole Projects. Her stomach sank. She confronted him that evening. "That was you, wasn't it?" He looked almost guilty. "I thought it would help business." "It's not your job to rescue me." "I wasn't rescuing you. I was supporting you." "There's a difference," she said, voice trembling. "One makes me feel grateful. The other makes me feel small." He stepped closer. "Lara, that's not what I wanted." "Then what do you want from me?" she interrupted. The silence that followed hurt more than shouting could. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I just wanted to be around someone who doesn't care what my name means." "What does it mean?" He hesitated. "Cole. Ethan Cole. You've probably seen it somewhere." The name hit her like cold water. "Coletech?" He nodded once. She stepped back. "You're that Ethan Cole, the company that builds half the city?" He looked almost ashamed. "It's not who I am anymore." She laughed bitterly. "You lied. Every conversation, every moment, you hid this." "I never lied," he said softly. "I just didn't tell you because I wanted to know what it feels like to be treated like anyone else." Her voice cracked. "And I was your experiment?" "No, you were the first person who didn't pretend." The words should have comforted her, but they only deepened the ache. "You should go, Ethan." He opened his mouth but closed it again, nodding slowly. "If that's what you want." When he walked away, the rain began again, just like the first night they met. She stood there until he disappeared into the mist, her heart heavier than before. At the hospital later, her mother noticed the change instantly. "He's gone, isn't he?" Lara nodded. "Do you love him?" She wiped her eyes. "I don't know. Maybe I just loved that someone finally saw me." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Then don't let that kind of seeing turn into hate." Lara didn't reply. She just stared at the window, where rain traced patterns that looked too much like goodbye. Days passed, and Ethan stayed away. Lara told herself she didn't care, but every time someone in a dark coat entered the cafe, her heart jumped before reason caught up. Work felt mechanical again. Nights were longer. Even her mother noticed the silence that had returned to her eyes. One evening, the hospital called. Her mother's condition had relapsed. The doctor explained the surgery costs an impossible sum. She hung up, chest hollow, staring at the wall. She wanted to call Ethan, but pride stopped her fingers from dialing. 2 nights later, she received an anonymous deposit. Enough to cover everything. No name, no message, but she knew. She sat there in the dim hospital hallway, phone trembling in her hands, anger and gratitude warring inside her. At dawn, she texted him. "We need to talk." He replied a few hours later. "Tell me when and where." They met in the same park where it all started. The air was still, morning dew glistening on the bench where they first spoke. Lara didn't sit. She stood with folded arms, the distance between them colder than the weather. "You paid for my mother's surgery." He nodded. "Yes. Why?" Because I could. That's not an answer. He sighed, stepping closer. Because you were drowning, and I had a rope. I couldn't just watch you sink. Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed sharp. You don't get to decide what drowning looks like for me. I was trying to help. You were trying to control the story, she said. To be the hero. Again. His jaw tightened. Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think anymore, she admitted. You showed up like some miracle, then hid who you were. You made me feel small every time you tried to fix something. Ethan took a step back, wounded. I never wanted to make you feel small. I just wanted to matter. Then be honest next time, she said, turning away. Lara, please. She paused but didn't look back. You were right that night. We were both pretending. You to be ordinary, me to be strong, but pretending doesn't last. She walked off, leaving him standing there beneath the fading dawn light, the silence louder than any apology. Weeks went by. Ethan returned to his company reluctantly, diving into meetings and press conferences. Cameras caught his smile, but behind it, there was a hollow stillness. Every night, he replayed that hug in his mind, the only moment that had felt real in years. Lara, meanwhile, worked double shifts to pay off debts. Her mother's recovery was slow, but steady. Life felt stable again, only emptier. People at the cafe spoke about Ethan Cole being back in the headlines, hosting charity galas, signing deals. She pretended not to care, but her stomach twisted every time his name appeared on a screen. One night, as she closed the cafe, a customer left behind a newspaper. On the front page, Ethan Cole's foundation expands aid to city hospitals. Her mother's hospital was listed among the beneficiaries. She sat down hard, staring at the photo of him, shaking hands with doctors. His eyes looked tired, familiar, lonely. The next morning, she visited her mother. You look distracted, her mom said softly. I saw something about him, Lara admitted. Her mother smiled gently. You can't hide from what still matters to you. It's not that simple. It rarely is, but pretending you don't care hurts worse than admitting you do. Lara sighed. He lied, Mom. He hid, her mother corrected. People lie to deceive. People hide because they're afraid. That night, Lara went for a walk through the park again. The same bench, the same air. She sat there alone, tracing her fingers on the damp wood. For a second, she wished he'd appear, just to say one real thing, but he didn't. Instead, she whispered into the quiet, maybe I should have let him hug me one more time. Unseen by her, Ethan drove past that same street minutes later. He saw the empty bench and almost stopped, but didn't. His world was full again, yet it had never felt more hollow. A few days later, he got an invitation to speak at a small community fundraiser, an event hosted by local artists to support hospital patients. He agreed, not knowing why, until he arrived and saw Lara among the volunteers. She froze when their eyes met. He approached slowly. You're helping organize this? She nodded. Just volunteering. He gestured around. It's beautiful. You did this? Not alone. They stood awkwardly for a moment, surrounded by chatter and music. Then she said, You could have told me you were doing all this. He smiled faintly. Would you have believed I wasn't trying to impress you? Probably not. I guess I didn't want to ruin what we had by reminding you who I was. What we had, she repeated, the words bitter and soft at once. He looked down. Do we still have anything left? I don't know, she admitted. But I can't pretend you don't mean something to me. He met her gaze. Then, maybe that's enough. Before she could respond, one of the organizers called her to the stage to speak about her mother's recovery. Lara hesitated, glancing at him, then walked away. As she spoke to the crowd, her voice trembled but stayed steady. Sometimes help comes from strangers. Sometimes it feels like a miracle. But healing isn't just about what's given to you. It's about what you learn to give back. The audience applauded. Ethan did too, his eyes glistening. Afterward, he found her outside under the fairy lights. That was beautiful, he said. She shrugged. It was just the truth. The truth looks good on you. She rolled her eyes. That's a terrible line. He laughed quietly. I've been practicing terrible lines since you left. Something in his tone softened her resistance. She smiled despite herself. They stood in silence for a moment before she said, You still owe me a coffee. Only if you promise not to throw it at me this time. No promises. They laughed, the first real laughter they'd shared since everything fell apart. It didn't fix anything, but it broke the wall just enough for warmth to slip through. As he drove away that night, Ethan felt something shift inside him, a cautious hope. He didn't know if he'd ever have her again, but maybe having her trust was enough to start. Lara watched his car lights fade, her fingers tracing the edge of the sketch she'd given him long ago. She didn't know he still kept it framed on his desk. That night, she dreamt of the first hug, the rain, the silence, the heartbeat she'd heard against his chest. She woke up crying, not from sadness, but because for the first time, she realized what that moment had truly meant. Weeks passed again, but something had changed. Their silence wasn't sharp anymore. It just lingered like a bruise that time hadn't decided what to do with yet. Lara threw herself into her work at the cafe and volunteered twice a week at the hospital, helping patients' families. It gave her purpose, something stable to hold. But some nights, when the cafe lights dimmed and her shift ended, she'd find herself scrolling through her phone, reading articles about Ethan Cole, how he was shifting his company's direction, cutting luxury projects, investing in community healthcare. Every headline sounded like a quiet apology. Her coworkers noticed. "You keep reading about that billionaire guy," one teased. "He's just everywhere lately," Lara said, brushing it off. "Yeah, but you smile when you read about him." Lara looked down, hiding her grin. "It's nothing." The truth was, it wasn't nothing. It was a memory she couldn't quite bury. His voice, his laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she wasn't invisible. Then one evening, while she was serving customers, she saw him again. Ethan standing at the doorway. No entourage, no photographers, just him. He waited until she finished a line of orders before approaching the counter. "You look busy," he said softly. She froze, her hands tightening on the tray. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to see you." Lara exhaled, glancing around to make sure no one was watching too closely. "You're really bad at staying gone." He smiled faintly. "I tried. Didn't work." She handed him a cup without asking what he wanted. "Still black, no sugar?" He nodded, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. "You remembered." "I forget a lot of things," she said, "but not that." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt like something fragile trying to breathe again. Finally, Ethan said, "Would you walk with me? Just for a few minutes." She hesitated, then untied her apron. 5 minutes. They walked down the quiet street, the hum of city lights following them. Ethan spoke first. "I didn't come to fix anything. I came to say I'm sorry for lying, for assuming I knew what you needed, for not understanding that help isn't always kindness." Lara's expression softened. "You don't owe me an apology, Ethan. You were just too much too soon, and I wasn't ready to be seen." He looked at her, really looked. "I don't think I ever stopped seeing you." She smiled weakly. "You make it sound romantic." "It isn't," he said. "It's just the truth." They reached the park, the same bench. The rain hadn't come this time, but the air still smelled like the first night. Ethan stopped, facing her. "You said pretending doesn't last," he said. "You were right. I pretended to be fine, to move on, to forget the way you made silence feel safe, but I can't keep pretending." Lara looked down at her shoes. "I don't know what you expect from me." "Nothing," he said simply. "I just needed you to know." She sighed, rubbing her palms together. "You're still good at showing up when everything in my life feels too heavy." "Maybe I'm drawn to the weight," he said with a small smile. She laughed quietly. "That's not healthy." "Neither is missing you." Her laughter faded into silence. "My mom's better," she said suddenly. "Walking again, eating properly. She keeps asking about you." He smiled softly. "Tell her I said hi." "I did, every time." For a while they just stood there. Then she said, "Do you still have that sketch?" He nodded. "Framed on my desk. Everyone thinks it's some fancy art piece. I don't correct them." Her chest tightened. "You kept it all this time?" "It reminds me that the best things aren't always loud," he said. The moment lingered. The wind rustled through the trees. She wanted to say something, but couldn't trust her voice. He glanced at his watch. "I should go. There's a flight tonight." To where? Singapore. Business expansion. I'll be gone a few months. She swallowed hard. Right. I didn't come to make you wait, he said gently. I just didn't want to leave without saying goodbye properly this time. She nodded, her eyes glistening. You could have just texted. I needed to see you smile once more. Her lips trembled, but she smiled anyway. There. Now go before I stop being nice. He laughed, then hesitated. Can I? She knew what he was asking before he said it. For a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped forward. He opened his arms, not wide, just enough. She leaned in, letting his warmth wrap around her. It was soft, careful, the kind of hug that spoke of everything they hadn't said. When they pulled away, her voice broke. Pretend to hug me again. He frowned gently. Pretend? She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Because if it's real, I won't let go. He brushed a tear from her face. Then let's pretend forever. The words lingered, quiet and trembling, before he stepped back and smiled through his own tears. Take care of yourself, Lara. You too, Ethan. He walked away slowly. She watched until he disappeared into the night, her arms still crossed over the space where his warmth had been. 3 months passed. Lara focused on her work, on her mother, on building something small but meaningful. She started selling her sketches online, donating part of the proceeds to the hospital. It wasn't fame or wealth, but it was hers. Then one afternoon, she got an email from E. Cole Foundation, partnership proposal. Her heart stopped. She opened it. It wasn't a business pitch. It was a single line. Would you help us design the community art program you dreamed of? Attached was a photo, her sketch displayed in a newly opened city hospital wing. Below it, a note in Ethan's handwriting. To the woman who taught me what real help looks like. Lara covered her mouth, tears spilling again. For the first time in months, the tears didn't hurt. That evening, she sat with her mother watching the sunset. Her mom asked softly, Are you going to reply? Lara smiled faintly. Not yet. Maybe I'll let him wait this time. Her mother chuckled. You always were the patient one. I just want to do it right, Lara said. No pretending. Not anymore. Her mom reached for her hand. That's how you know it's real. As night fell, Lara opened her laptop, typed a single message, and hit send. Let's build something real, together. She didn't know what would happen next. Maybe he'd reply, maybe he wouldn't. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came after. She leaned back, whispering to herself, Pretend to hug me. Then she smiled. No, not pretend. Not this time. Outside, the wind moved softly through the city. Somewhere across the ocean, Ethan opened her message and smiled too, his flight delayed just enough for him to change his plans. 2 weeks later, the cafe was closing early when Lara's phone buzzed. A text. Ethan, I'm back in town. Can we talk? Her fingers hovered over the screen. She typed, erased, then finally replied, Tomorrow, same park. That night, she barely slept. She replayed everything. Their first meeting in the rain, the nights outside the hospital, the arguments, the silence. How many times had she imagined this moment? Yet now that it was real, she was terrified of what it might mean. The next day she arrived early. The park looked different under sunlight. The trees glowed with morning gold, and the bench where everything had started felt almost too quiet. She sat, her hands clasped tightly, heartbeat steady, but loud. Ethan appeared a few minutes later, dressed simply, no suit, no tie, just a worn jacket and tired eyes that still somehow carried warmth. Hey, he said softly. Hey, you came early. I didn't want to be late, she said. He smiled faintly. Neither did I. There was a silence between them, not awkward, not heavy, just the kind that comes after everything's been said and what's left is truth. He sat beside her, leaving a careful space. I got your message. I figured, she said, smiling a little. You always find your way back. I wasn't sure you'd want me to. I wasn't sure either. He looked at her hands, trembling slightly. You said you wanted to build something real. She nodded. If we do this, I need it to be honest. No secrets, no pretending we're okay when we're not. He met her gaze. Agreed. I'm tired of masks too. For a while they just sat there. Birds fluttered across the pond. A group of kids ran past laughing. The world felt ordinary, yet somehow extraordinary in its calm. Ethan finally spoke. "You know, after I left for Singapore, I kept thinking about that hug." Lara chuckled softly. "You and your dramatic memories." "I'm serious," he said, smiling. It was the first time in years that something felt real. No cameras, no performance, just you. She lowered her eyes. "I almost told myself it didn't mean anything." "Did it?" She looked up at him. "It meant everything. I just wasn't brave enough to admit it." Ethan exhaled slowly. "You once told me not to look at you like I knew what you needed. I'm not going to make that mistake again. But if I could ask for one thing, it's a chance to start over, as equals this time." Lara tilted her head, eyes soft. "Equals, huh? You think you can handle that?" "I'll try," he said, smiling. "You've always been better at the hard parts." "Not true, I just hide it better." He laughed quietly. "Then maybe I can help you stop hiding." For a second, they both just smiled, small, cautious smiles that carried the weight of everything they'd survived. Then Lara said, "My mom's walking again. She wants to open a small bakery. She said she'll name a muffin after you if you ever show up for breakfast." Ethan grinned. "Tell her I'll bring my appetite." "I will." The pause that followed was softer this time, almost comfortable. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You know what's funny? For years I thought power came from control, from making things happen. But you taught me that sometimes power is just being vulnerable enough to admit you need someone." Lara blinked back tears. "You always talk like you're writing a speech." He chuckled. "Bad habit, comes with the job." "You're impossible," she said, smiling through the ache in her chest. "I know," he said, "but so are you." Their laughter mingled, light and genuine, breaking the years of tension that had defined them. Then Ethan's expression grew serious. "Lara, when I said I didn't want to fix you, I meant it, but I also know I can't stand by and not try to build something better. With you, for everyone like you. That's why I started the foundation, and I want you to lead it." Her eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes. You understand what people need more than I ever could. You've lived it. You've felt it. That's what the foundation should be built on. Empathy, not strategy." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "Ethan, I don't have the background." "You have the heart," he interrupted. "That's the only thing I trust anymore." She looked at him for a long moment, unsure whether to cry or laugh. "You're insane." "Probably," he said, "but I'm sure about this." She smiled weakly. "You're really not going to let me stay small, are you?" He reached for her hand. "You were never small, Lara. You just forgot." The contact sent warmth through her chest. It wasn't grand or cinematic. It was steady, quiet, grounding. The kind of touch that says, "You're safe now." She whispered, "You still owe me a real hug." He smiled, standing. "Then let's fix that." She stood too. He opened his arms, and she stepped into them. This time, there was nothing hesitant, nothing held back. Just two people who had broken and rebuilt themselves enough to finally fit. He whispered against her hair. "No pretending this time." "No pretending," she repeated. They stayed like that for a long time, until the noise of the city faded, and all that remained was the sound of breath, the rhythm of something healed. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan said, "So, will you do it? Join the foundation?" She smiled. "Only if you promise to make your own coffee once in a while." "Deal." "Black, no sugar?" "Still the same." She laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Some things never change." He smiled. "Some things shouldn't." As they walked out of the park together, the world seemed lighter. The path wasn't perfect, but it was theirs now, shared, real, unpretending. Later that week, Lara visited the hospital again. Her mother was sitting near the window, sunlight on her face. "You saw him," she said knowingly. Lara smiled. "I did. And I think I'm finally ready to stop running." Her mother nodded, proud and gentle. "Then, you already know what love is." That night, Lara opened her laptop and drafted the official partnership proposal for the Foundation's first project. It wasn't about Ethan anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever needed a hand that didn't come with strings. Before she sent it, she added a small note at the bottom, dedicated to those who taught me the difference between saving someone and standing beside them. When Ethan received it, he read the note twice, smiling. He didn't reply right away. He just leaned back, remembering that first rainy night, the hug, the broken glass, the silence that started everything, and whispered to himself, "Pretend to hug me." Then he laughed softly. No, never again. That same evening, a video went live on Lara's small social media page, a short clip titled "The Story Behind the Hug." She spoke in her calm, steady voice. Sometimes, the people who save us don't wear capes. They don't come with promises or plans. They just show up when we're too tired to ask. If you've ever been that person or met that person, don't let go too easily. Life's too short for pretending. At the end of the video, she smiled and added, "If this story touched you, subscribe, share, and tell someone today that they matter, because maybe that's all we really need." Months later, the foundation's work had begun to take shape. Lara had taken charge of the community outreach program, organizing art therapy sessions in hospitals, funding small businesses run by patients' families, and hiring volunteers who had once been on the receiving end of help. Every week, Ethan came by the office quietly, without the corporate crowd. He'd bring her coffee, black, no sugar, and sit by her desk, watching her lead. There was no need for grand gestures anymore. Being there was enough. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings, Lara leaned back and said, "You know, I used to think people like you lived in a different world." He smiled. "We do, but I like this one better." She chuckled. "You say that now. Wait till I drag you to a neighborhood cleanup. Drive at 6 a.m. He pretended to groan. "That sounds like torture." "Good," she said. "You could use some humility." "I think you've already given me enough of that," he replied, grinning. Their laughter filled the room, the kind that didn't need to hide behind pain anymore. A few weeks later, the foundation launched its first official community event. It was a small fair at the hospital where Lara's mother had once stayed. Local artists displayed their work. Children painted murals on the walls. Nurses sold homemade crafts. There were no spotlights, no speeches, just people connecting. Ethan stood quietly by the entrance, watching Lara move through the crowd, greeting volunteers, hugging patients, laughing freely. Every now and then, she'd look over at him and smile, the kind of smile that said, "Thank you for staying." When the event wound down, Lara joined him near the exit. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm just watching you do what you were meant to do," he said softly. "You sound like my mom." "She's right most of the time," he said. Lara laughed. "You've met her twice. And she already scares me," he teased. "She should." They stood there, side by side, as the sunset bathed the hospital walls in orange light. Ethan glanced at her. "You know, I never thanked you properly." "For what?" "For teaching me that love isn't about saving someone. It's about standing beside them." Lara smiled. "I learned that from you, too." He reached out, taking her hand. "We really went through all that, just to end up back here, didn't we?" She nodded. "Maybe we needed to break before we could be honest." "I'm done pretending," he said. "Good," she whispered. "So am I." They stood there quietly, fingers intertwined. Around them, laughter echoed, music played, life went on. It was simple, real, human. Later that night, Lara sat at her desk, editing the second part of her video series. The first one had gone viral. Hundreds of thousands of comments from people sharing their stories of loss, healing, and unexpected kindness. This new one was titled "The Hug That Changed Everything." The camera opened on her sitting at the same park bench. She spoke softly, eyes steady. Not all endings are loud. Some come quietly, with a realization that you don't need to be saved, just seen. That love doesn't fix everything. It just gives you a reason to keep going. When I met Ethan, I didn't need a miracle. I just needed a moment of warmth to remind me I was still human. She paused, glancing at the camera. If you've ever felt invisible, remember this. You're not. Someone out there sees you, even if you haven't met them yet. Sometimes it starts with something as small as a hug. The video cut to clips of the hospital fair, children painting, nurses laughing, Ethan handing out coffee, Lara hugging an elderly woman. Then her voice returned. "So, today, if you're watching this, I'm asking one thing. Find someone who needs that warmth and give it. Not out of pity, not out of guilt, but because we all need to feel like we matter." She smiled softly, the kind that carried both peace and nostalgia. And if this story touched you, she continued, don't just scroll away. Subscribe, comment, share. Tell me your story. Tell me who you'd hug if you had the chance again. Because maybe that's how we heal. Together. The screen faded to black. A final line appeared in white text. Pretend to hug me until you don't have to pretend anymore. When the video premiered, Ethan watched from his office late at night. He didn't comment, didn't call, just watched quietly, smiling as her words echoed through the screen. A notification popped up minutes later. The video had reached 500,000 views. Thousands of people were writing about their own first hug, about lost loves, reconciliations, and strangers who'd changed their lives. He scrolled through the comments, heart swelling. One caught his eye. A Lara fawn. Sometimes, pretending is the first step to believing again. He smiled and whispered, she's starting something bigger than us. That weekend, they met at the hospital again. The art mural was nearly finished, bright colors stretching across the wall like hope painted into existence. Lara held a brush, smudged with blue paint. You missed a spot, she teased. Ethan leaned over, adding a streak of color beside hers. There, perfect. Still a control freak, she said. Still bossy, he countered. They both laughed, standing back to admire their work. When the volunteers left, they remained, sitting on the hospital steps as the lights dimmed. Lara rested her head on his shoulder. You know, she murmured, this isn't how I imagined my life would turn out. Disappointed? He asked. She smiled. Not even close. He brushed her hair gently aside. Neither am I. They sat there until the sky darkened, the world quiet except for the soft hum of the city. At some point, Ethan said, if someone asked me what love feels like now, I'd tell them. It feels like breathing after holding it in too long. Lara's voice was barely a whisper. Then don't stop. He didn't. The next morning, a new mural plaque was unveiled at the hospital entrance. It read, dedicated to everyone who chose kindness when silence was easier. The Cole Foundation and Lara Hale. And beneath that, in smaller letters, pretend to hug me until it becomes real. The story came full circle, not with grand drama or a final kiss, but with something much more powerful. Two people who stopped pretending. As the credits rolled in Lara's next video, her voice returned one last time. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you of something you've lost, or something you still hope for, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because stories like this only matter if they remind us that love, in its simplest form, is just showing up, one hug at a time.